Video review.
I've seen a lot of games, and I have a feeling this one is going to be special.
Hey everyone, it's almost the official start of the football season, and you know what that means? It's time for more Madden. With every new Madden release, there are almost always one or two prevailing features that get the bulk of attention. Features that not only make the current Madden definitively different from its predecessors, but also seemingly make the upgrade from one year to the next worthwhile. Madden NFL 10 is no different in this respect. Some of its features are quite substantial, like the long-awaited online franchise mode, or new types of tackles generated by the Pro Tack system. But it feels like the bulk of what's new in Madden 10 is less glossy and far more granular, affecting only the mechanical aspects of the football experience. It's almost as if Madden 10 represents a back-to-basics philosophy for the franchise, taking the focus away from the fancy modes and even fancier presentation elements for the purpose of making the sport itself the main draw.
Gets the pass away. Vincent Jackson crosses the plane. Or maybe he didn't.
The franchise mode remains unchanged on the superficial level. There's a new presentation element in the form of a show called The Extra Point. This essentially functions as a recap and halftime show with some very light commentary that doesn't really offer all that much insight. However, one aspect of the show reveals one of the franchise mode's greatest discrepancies. At the end of any week, The Extra Point awards a player with the Offensive Player of the Week or the Defensive Player of the Week, depending on the position. Despite numerous occasions of players having what could otherwise be considered an almost supernatural performance for 5-minute quarters, not once did they receive the recognition. It becomes apparent that there are two parts to this problem. The first is that some players are just that good, but the second is far more devious. Stats don't seem to scale properly for 5-minute quarters. When the computer plays its games, those stats are designed to reflect full 15-minute quarters, or at the very least, they reflect a simulation of a full game. It's hard to gauge how much this affects other aspects of the franchise mode, such as the player progression, if it does at all. There's just really no way to tell how stats, age, potential, and other categories are weighted, and if playing truncated quarters means that your players won't progress the same way that players on the computer-controlled teams do. Fortunately, playing an online franchise mitigates a lot of these problems, provided you fill most of the spots with other people and not just computer-controlled teams. But it also has its own share of issues. The biggest being that there aren't any salary restrictions for free agents. CPU trades can happen unabated, so this means that you can dump the worst player on your team for the best on another if that team happens to be controlled by the computer. Thankfully, the commissioner can turn this off completely, but it would have been nice to see some parity between the offline and online franchise modes when it comes to some of these front office features. But whether you're playing offline or online, Madden NFL 10's gameplay tweaks are equally evident in either situation. The much ballyhooed Pro Tack system works as advertised, with numerous players clinging to the ball carrier before dragging him down. This feature also adds some much-needed muscle to the running game, making it feel as though you're really fighting and scraping to get those few extra yards out of a run on offense and really stuffing a running back with 5 or so players on defense. In most games, it genuinely feels like the AI sees the plays you're running, analyzes what's working and what's not, and then adapts accordingly to shut you down. There are also times where you have to really work the run before you can get any sort of passing game going, and vice versa. Then there are the stretches in a drive of a different game where you can run the same play repeatedly, and no matter what the AI does, it can't seem to stop you. And this is against some of the best defensive teams in the league, no less. Still, it's worth noting that the pass defense is generally better and more realistic on the whole, and it's far more difficult to abuse the same pass play made to the same player on back-to-back down. The AI also seems to be particularly adept at making it difficult to throw the ball any more than 15 yards down the field in any consistent manner. But this better pass defense also means that the frequency of interceptions is still relatively high.
Throws left, picked off. Pace drags into the...
Undoubtedly, the quarterback has reached some of the best changes, including an easy right stick evade option for when the defense comes crashing down on you. But one major complaint with the position is still this. Quarterback sneaks are still way too easy to abuse. Forgoing a punt and running a QB sneak on 4th and 2 should be a much greater risk than it currently is. It's also worth mentioning, however, that fatigue on the default setting plays a much greater role than it ever did in previous games, which makes it harder to abuse other plays. If you keep passing to your star receiver, that receiver's stamina will drop to the point that he automatically gets pulled for a play or two before being automatically sent back into the game. As far as Madden 10's look is concerned, there's a noticeable improvement over the last year's game, but most of it comes in the form of finer details on the player models, such as patches, as well as presentation elements that help give the game a more broadcast TV-like feel. On the other hand, commentary is by far the weakest aspect of Madden NFL 10's presentation.
They controlled their gaps, and that time there was nowhere to go.
As always, Chris Collinsworth tries his best to give some interesting comments in certain situations. He's not really the problem, but his play-by-play man, Tom Hammond, is absolutely terrible, in that his commentary is completely bland and lacks any sort of dynamic that really keys you into the on-field action aside from the most basic information.
Tackle is made by Dansby. Parker gets about 4 yards on the play.
There's a real sense that EA wants to get back to the fundamentals of football with Madden NFL 10, and many of the changes they've made in that respect are good ones. The running game feels great, and the passing game is much improved over previous iterations. The Pro Tac system works just about as well as you'd want it to, and the inclusion of online franchises, while featuring some dubious options, is a pretty good reason to dive into this year's game. But for all these improvements, there's seemingly an equal number of nagging setbacks, ranging from the frequency of turnovers to inconsistencies in AI-controlled defenses. Of course, these don't sink the entire Madden 10 experience, as it's still a fun game to play, but a little more work in some of these areas would have gone a long way in making this the best Madden to date.